idea how long the Bitcoin episode lasted for. This is the Ethereum one. I thought I was going to do a short one. I felt like it was short throughout it. I probably just hypnotized myself and went on for ages. This one we will keep nice and short because I always recommend people watch the Bitcoin video as well. And in this video, this will supplement your Bitcoin knowledge and help you look across the markets. And if you're watching the Bitcoin videos and you're trading Ethereum, then that's great because you're looking across the different assets in the markets, and that's a really, really good thing to do to be able to make better decisions about the overall trend and what you're looking at the time. The overall trend here on this, by the way, this is just a 1 hour time frame. Let's go up to something a bit more reasonable. The overall trend on this, by the way, remains a downward trend, despite the highs that we've had in here, which have been really kind of exciting in terms of the getting up as high as 248. You can see there that we did that quite recently in terms of the price action, just coming up highs, but we're still below the sort of the 250 area that we wanted to see the prices get up as high as. If you look between the last two peaks here on this and compare it here, then you could say prematurely, of course, never get ahead of yourself, that there is the potential for hidden for regular bearish divergence to be showing up on the charts just there. In the bigger scheme of things, if you compare this high to this high, then you've got your hidden bearish divergence in terms of the downward trend. So just here, most recent time frames, if prices don't manage to make it above the 252 sort of area and go down from here down below, then you're looking between the most recent two peaks here and seeing a touch of bearish divergence perhaps showing up. So should the prices go below our fuzzy line at 241 again, 242, and go back down to where it was line, where this purple downward sloping trend line was before, then we'd be looking at bearish divergence, because that would be a local high. And on the grander scheme of things, looking back towards the previous price action in this downward trend and comparing the previous high here, which the RSI got up as high as that, and the most current one which got up as high as this, but then this price action not going higher than it over there, if it closes out that way, then you'd be looking at hidden bearish divergence. Okay, so we have a couple hours left on this. I'm going to publish this video long before we know the answer to that question, but that's the question that you'll be wanting to ask yourself perhaps later on today when you're looking at the charts. So this means we get to keep this video nice and simple overall, and I highly recommend that you take a look at the Bitcoin video, because the two of these things, while they don't work in lockstep, they certainly have they're certainly part of the same sort of industry. It's like looking at a couple of different airlines, or looking at a couple of different oil companies, or a couple of different whatevers. They're the same industry, same thing, and very much interest in volume wise and all the rest of it. They work quite similarly. So, overall, all the questions that we can ask on the Bitcoin time frames, Bitcoin charts, can be asked over here, including if we go up towards the bigger time frames, whether or not, overall, ultimately, we're going to end up being within a descending triangle structure. Looking back down to where this could then come down to 242, as we spoke about recently, as being the sort of the top side profit taking line, and we saw that for a couple of days in a row here. So, that was good. Moving on beyond that then, and looking down the way, that could also be your profit taking target. Should you be, and I'm not a financial advisor, none of this financial advice, shorten this down towards these targets here as where you could cash in on those moves down the way, just in terms of taking an easier sort of trade in terms of managing your risk and whatever else, and not being greedy and looking for just a couple of percent move. Of course, if you look beyond that and you did actually see the prices come back into this structure overall and fill out the sort of the box in general, or the triangle in general, then of course, looking from these lofty heights down towards there, you could be looking at a 10% move, of course, and that's very significant in terms of trading overall. But we know in the meantime there's these smaller targets, 242, 252. That's the sort of the $10 area that we want to be looking to in terms of all of this before we start. And we can also ask questions up here. Hey, are we faking out or breaking out? Hey, are we faking out or breaking out? Should we break out of this towards the top side, which is kind of the least likely outcome statistically speaking, if it does indeed turn out to be a descending triangle, and of course we could be looking at other things like the wedge and whatnot, whatever else, then the move off the back of it, let me just see here, if I stick over this measuring stick over here, oops, que grande. If we move this down here to here and put it over here to where the breakout's kind of potentially sort of, so to speak, happening at, it's all the way up there. You'd be looking at 274 if you were to go crazy on it, but really you're looking towards the high 250s and the 260 area, and whether or not we can put in highs overall really compared to our previous price action here, and start to challenge the areas that we had in the past in this inflection zone up to where, if you were to go crazy on it, that this measure move could take you to, but that's not what the textbooks would tell you. They tell you to take this measuring stick and chop it down to maybe more around about these areas where we'd be actually asking questions in about significant inflection area in the past in terms of the price action. But that's all very hopeful, very, very hopeful, even currently at this moment in time. You know, even with this potential of a breakout of that, that's very, very hopeful, because this could easily be reworked, as we've spoken about several times, including in yesterday's video when we were trying to discover where could this line actually be at. Because previously it was down here, and what happened is we broke out above it and we tested up, retested it again, and now we've moved towards the top side. And just bear in mind that makes this thing ever so slightly smaller, and then a move down the way on this would bring you down towards, you know, if you're looking towards the previous highs, you'd have to be asking questions before you ever arrived up towards that 260 zone if this were to be the breakout from the where it was line. Of course, you know, ultimately faking out and coming back down towards this could just mean that we put this, you know, we ask questions about this line yet again. It was using the wicks before. Should this turn out to be a wick overall, then of course that we can keep it there. Should it actually just need to be moved over like this, and instead, you know, a sort of overall fake out from one thing can become another thing, then you'd be looking towards that as being like that there, and this line here, potentially, this is a bit big for doing this, hoped it would be quicker than this. You'd be looking at this and going, are we in, for instance, a descending broadening wedge? Oops. God, wanted this to be quicker this episode. Are we in something like that instead, you know, or is it indeed something else entirely? So, you know, where we could get rid of all these things altogether and just kind of look at the price action in and of itself and say, what have we got on the go here? And we do need to look towards these previous areas of the 250s, and I think that's the best reminder to everybody overall for what to be looking for. So I'll just say cheerio now. Thanks very much for tuning in today. Did I actually delete all of them? I meant to hit hide. Did I hit delete or hide? Yeah, cool. Great. Okay, thanks very much for tuning in today, and we'll take a look at, that doesn't line up there. We'll take a look at everything. Of course, a reminder as well, a failed pattern is as good as a working one. So there was this head and shoulders here, and it failed as we went past this area up towards the top side. You know, a failed pattern is as much a part of pattern looking stuff as looking for confirmation ones. So bearing in mind all that chat there about where these things could ultimately end up, failing to break out of here, a failure towards that could then be seen when we come back down towards these areas, especially the sort of hit where it was line, moving towards the downside, and that would be quite significant, because that would be, you know, as good as a confirmation in some senses, especially for percentage moves trading. So thanks very much for tuning in. That'll have to do. I'll catch you in the next episode. Sorry, it went on a bit longer than I intended to actually overall, but you know, maybe it was worth it. Let me know. And if you want to be part of that final 36 people, just 36 of you wonderful people to bring the channel up to 1,000, then I would be delighted, over the moon, in fact, overjoyed. So I'll see you in the next episode. As always, do these every day. Thanks so much for tuning in.